Hello everyone, and then welcome to the chapter 13. So today we are discussing the how of the international business entering the foreign market. So whether you are a giant corporation or growing the startup, the deciding how to step onto the foreign soil is one of the most high-stake decision a manager will ever make. So it's about the balancing your ambition with the reality of the risk. So let's start with the real world success story, JCB. So they are the giant of the backhoe loader. Their story in India is a perfect example of the strategic evolution. They didn't go in alone at the first. They partnered with the local conglomerate to run the ropes. 20 years later, once they understood the market, they took the full control. So today, India is not just a side market. It's their biggest revenue driver globally. This shows that entry the strategies can and should change over time. So before picking a method, you have to answer three basic questions. So which market, when do we go, and how big do we go? So favorable to market usually have the uh, stable politics and then the clear market rule. Timing is about being the first mover or waiting to see what happens. And scale. That's about how much skin you are willing to put in the game right away. Being the first is a double-edged sword. On one hand, you get to capture the market, building the brand, and create the switching the costs that make it harder for customer to leave you. But on the other hand, you pay the pre cost. You have to educate the customer and then deal with the risk of the failing because you didn't know the local rule yet. Sometimes being second allow you to learn from the first guy's expensive mistake. So scale is a massive strategic signal. When a company enters the market at 100% commitment, they are telling competitor, so we are here to stay. It creates an immediate impact, but is incredibly hard to reverse if things go wrong. So small scale and enter is more like a pilot program. It's a safer, but you might find it harder to catch up if a competitor goes big while you are still learning. So there are many the paths to entry. So exporting is the easiest and the cheapest, but the transport costs can eat your profit. Licensing and then franchising to let someone else take the risk, but you might lose control over your quality or technology. So joint venture share the burden with the local, while the wholly owned subsidiaries give you total control, but at the highest cost and the risk. Let's compare the two heavy right in here. So joint venture are great for politically sensitive market where you need a local faith. But you risk your partner become the future competitor. So wholly owned the subsidiaries or WOS are for when your technology is your crown jewel, you do not want to share it. It's expensive, but it let you coordinate your global strategies without having to ask the partner for permission. So, how do you choose? Look at your know-how. If your advantage is purely technological and then avoid sharing it, use WOS. If your advantage is management know-how, like a hotel chain or fast food brand, then franchising or joint ventures are your best friend for rapid expansion. So your brand is protected by law, but your local partner handle the day-to-day headache. So finally, do you build or buy greenfield venture, building from the ground up? Let you create the exact culture and then system you want. It's slower but cleaner. So acquisition are fast. You buy the market share and then customer instantly. But beware the hobbyist hypothesis. Managers often overpay for companies that have the toxic culture or hidden problem they cannot fix. So, sum up, there is no single right way to enter the market. It's all about the specific situation, your customers, your company's core strategies, and then how much risk you are willing to stomach. I will open the floor for any question now, and then remember to check your advocate for weekly comprehension question. And then next, I have a short video for you to watch that, explore those of the concept with fresh example. Let's watch.
You ever wonder how a massive company actually decides to expand into a new country? I mean, you think it's all just spreadsheets and number crunching, right? Finding the absolute cheapest, most efficient way to do business. But what if I told you the biggest factor wasn't about efficiency at all? What if it was about something, well, a lot more human? That's exactly what we're diving into. See, it really boils down to this one huge question. Do you team up with a local company in a joint venture, share the risks, but also the rewards? Or do you go it alone, build everything from scratch yourself, and keep total control with what's called a wholly owned subsidiary? This one decision, it can literally make or break a company's entire global game plan. And believe me, this decision is anything but random. It's really a tug of war between two totally different ways of looking at the world. Think of it like two different playbooks for how to win in a brand new market. On one side, you have the cold, hard logic of efficiency. And on the other, you've got the much more subtle social game of just fitting in. All right, so let's start with the playbook that probably just makes the most sense to all of us. This is basically Business 101, right? You make the smartest, most cost-effective decision you can, one that gives you the most control over your own destiny. Now, the fancy academic name for this is transaction cost theory, but honestly, you can just think of it as the don't waste money or time theory. Every single decision, from who you hire to where you expand, is looked at through one lens. How do we minimize our costs and get the biggest bang for our buck? It is all about the bottom line. So what does this playbook tell you to do? It screams, go it alone. And why? Well, for a few really good reasons. First, you get to protect your secret recipe. That valuable technology or research you don't want a partner running off with. Second, you keep absolute, total control. And finally, hey, if you already know the country well, you don't need a local guide, right? You can handle it yourself and save a bunch of time and money. But now for the counter move. This is where it gets really interesting. What if the most important thing isn't being the most efficient, but being the most accepted? This playbook isn't about winning contracts. It's about winning hearts and minds. It's a social strategy. Okay, so this idea is rooted in something called institutional theory. And the core of it is that companies, a lot like people, are social creatures. They crave what's called legitimacy. They need to be seen as appropriate, as trustworthy, by everyone from the government to the local customers. And sometimes getting that legitimacy means making a choice that, on a spreadsheet, doesn't look like the most efficient one at all. So this pressure to fit in, it comes in three main flavors. First, you have the regulatory pressure. That's the easy one. You just have to follow the official, written down laws. A no-brainer. But then it gets trickier. There's normative pressure. This is about understanding all the unwritten social rules, the cultural norms. And finally, you have cognitive pressure. This is basically the when in Rome effect. When you're not sure what to do, you just copy what the successful local companies are doing, because, well, that's just how things are done here. So here's the bottom line. Let's put these two side by side. The efficiency lens always asks, what's the most efficient? And the answer is usually to go it alone. But the legitimacy lens asks a totally different question. What's the most appropriate? And the answer there is often to team up with a local partner who knows the ropes. Two different questions, two very, very different answers. Okay, so we've got these two competing ideas, but where does this fitting in playbook really shine? Well, the answer is in emerging markets, places where the normal rules of business often just don't apply. Researchers have a name for this unique challenge: institutional voids. And I want you to think of it like missing infrastructure. But we're not talking about missing roads or bridges. We're talking about missing institutional infrastructure. Imagine trying to run a business without a reliable legal system, or trustworthy banks, or even a simple way to find and hire good people. That's an institutional void. And this quote from the research just paints such a vivid picture. It says, in India, they sometimes say that, due to the poor legal system, your children often inherit your arguments. Just let that sink in. When the system for enforcing contracts is that broken, business disputes don't just last for years, they can last for generations. In an environment like that, a legal contract is only as good as the trust you have in the person you're signing it with. So when you literally can't rely on the official rule book, you have to rely on relationships and reputation. All of a sudden, that fitting in playbook and the legitimacy you get from having a trusted local partner, it becomes your most valuable asset. It's not a nice to have anymore. It's an absolute must have for survival. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Okay, this all sounds plausible, but how much does the local environment really matter compared to a company's own internal strategy? Well, a couple of researchers, Daphne Yu and Shige Makino, actually put a number on it, and that number is 37.7%. So what is that 37.7%? That's how much of a company's ownership decision is explained simply by the country they're entering. Now get this. Compare that to the influence of the company's own characteristics, like its size, its industry, its experience. That accounts for a tiny 2.4%. I mean, that is a staggering finding. It means that where a company goes is massively more important in this decision than who that company is. Context, it turns out, really is king. So we've got these two powerful playbooks, right? Efficiency and fitting in, and they're pulling in opposite directions. So which one is the right choice? Well, the surprising answer is you don't have to choose. The really smart global companies don't just pick one playbook and stick with it. They perform a strategic balancing act. They are constantly weighing their need for ruthless efficiency against their crucial need for local legitimacy. The real genius is knowing which way to lean, depending on the market and depending on the moment. So what are the big takeaways here? First, global expansion isn't just a math problem. It's a social problem, and context is everything. Second, we've seen that these big choices are almost always a hidden trade-off between efficiency and legitimacy. Third, and this is so important, in those unpredictable emerging markets, fitting in can be your lifeline. And it all leads to this one powerful conclusion. Where you go can be way more important than who you are. And that leaves us with a final thought to chew on. This tension, this constant battle between doing what's most efficient and doing what's socially accepted or appropriate, that doesn't just apply to giant corporations. It applies in our careers, in our communities, maybe even in our personal lives. So the question I'll leave you with is this. Where else do you see this hidden trade-off shaping the choices all around you?